If you're processing a ton of user data with your bot and you want a more advanced solution to data management, or if you just want to take your data management with the bot to the next level, again, the whole intention behind this and the benefit is that you don't have to go in manually copy and pasting this data, which takes a lot of time. If you want to make your life a lot easier, in addition to the email plugin, what you can use is a webhook. So how to set that up is basically what you do is go down. I'm going to add this between the success message. I'm going to add a JSON API plugin. And I'm going to set up what's called a webhook with this. So how it works essentially is we're taking data that we gather in the bot based on user attributes. We're sending that data through a webhook, which is like an intermediary between the bot and the end service that we want to use, which in this case is Google Sheets, which is a spreadsheet software. And we're sending that information to the intermediary, and then that intermediary is relaying that information, specifically those user attributes, to Google Sheets, and then it's formatting that on the sheet automatically. So it's saving us a ton of time and a ton of legwork. So how do we set that up? First, what we do, as I mentioned, is include the JSON API. And for the record, if you want, you can delete this send email module. That's just sort of a backup for what we're doing to send data. So to set up the JSON API and set up the webhook, what you want to do is change this type to post, and then it prompts you for a URL. So for the URL, you have to gather that from a website called Zapier. And this is the third-party intermediary that communicates from ChatFuel and these third parties. In this case, Google Sheets, as I mentioned. In the next video, I'll talk about integration with MailChimp. So at any rate, when you get to the homepage and when you create an account, you want to make a Zap. And this is basically a process, a set of information that relays and communicates between these two services again. Think of it like one of those crazy things like at the beginning of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where one thing happens, that triggers another thing, that triggers another thing, etc. It's sort of that type of scenario. So first what we want to do is set up the webhook with Zapier. So type in webhook and select webhooks by Zapier, and then select a catch hook. Save and continue. It'll prompt you for a child key, but that's irrelevant. Just hit continue. And now it'll ask you to use this URL. So copy the URL to your clipboard, put it over here, and now the URL will be successful. But before we continue, what we want to do is pass, because Zapier is going to ask us to test the information to make sure that the data can successfully pass through. So before we can do that, we need to attach the user attributes, the data that we actually want to send. So just for simplicity in this case, let's only send the phone number. So let's attach that attribute and include phone. Cool, so that's an attribute that's going to be passed to Zapier and then to Google Sheets. So we have that all set up. Now before Zapier, because if we try to test this now, it'll give us an error. It'll say the data didn't send, which makes sense because we didn't test the bot. We didn't actually pass any data through. So we need to test the bot, view on Messenger. So now let's go to the contact form. Let's fill everything out. I'm just going to enter random data. Cool. So I entered all the random data, got the success message, meaning that it triggered the JSON API, triggered the webhook, so the data should be passed through. So now let's go to Zapier and hit OK, I did this. It'll test to make sure the data passed through, and it'll take a minute to load and confirm. Great, so it said test successful, that means it worked. We can view the hook here, which will show us the attribute data that we passed through. And of course, it shows the attribute and the data associated with that attribute. Awesome. So next what we want to do then is we've set up the webhook. So the way that it looks right now is ChatFuel is communicating with Zapier. Zapier retrieves that information. That's great. But now what we need to do is actually set up Google Sheets to receive that information. So hit continue, and now go to Google Sheets. If it's not here, type it in up here. And there's a ton of other integrations that you can do that are really useful, by the way. For example, you can do one where you do a catch hook and then send that information to a printer, and then it'll automatically print out whatever data you specify. So really cool stuff that you can do with this functionality. Anyway, moving on. So now we're in Google Sheets, and let's say that whenever this webhook is triggered, whenever there's new data passed through, let's create a new spreadsheet row. And save and continue. So I already have a Google Sheets account linked here, but I don't think it's the one I have open in this tab. So let's connect a new account, select the account that you'd like, allow. Great. So you can rename it if you like for ease of use. I'm just going to hit save and continue. And now you can select which spreadsheet you want, assuming there's multiple spreadsheets on your account. So I have the Udemy test, I'll select that. For the worksheet, I will select sheet 0, or sheet 1 rather, which I assume is this. Yep, you can see the name down there. And we didn't see any headers. Okay, so what I have to do here is add a column header or a row header. So I will add, let's say, phone here. Okay, and let's refresh and see what happens. No. So let's add a column header. Refresh again. Cool. So now we can select the column header. So let's select the phone header. And select that information. Okay, so this first one is actually the blank one. That's why it's giving this weird input. So let's delete that. And then under the phone header, we'll connect it to the phone attribute with the phone number value. And hit continue. Make sure all of this looks good. Yes, the spreadsheet is Udemy. The sheet is 1. The phone number is the correct value. Great. So create and continue. Test successful. Let's do finish, name the Zap. So I will call this contact update and turn on the Zap. Great. So now let's test it again. Let's make sure the data passed through. It did. And let's pass through some more data. So let's restart the bot real quick just to confirm that this worked correctly. Go to the contact form again, copy and paste the same data. I'm going to do the phone number in reverse just to show that it's different. So now it should pass through Zapier and update, and great, that's exactly what it did. So obviously the phone number is down here because the row is updating in reverse. Excuse me, you can change that, but I neglected to in this demo. So that's how you can migrate the data, again, from the bot to an exterior or external service, which is super effective. It's much easier to manage your data that way. You don't have to just email or deal with constant emails being flooded into your inbox. And in the next video, I'll show you how to integrate with MailChimp to manually or automatically onboard new people who enter information on your bot onto your email list.